Are we ready? Good morning, everyone. I'm Donna Maloney, and I am chair of the Charter Club Committee, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. We do have all of our committee members present, so we do have a quorum. First thing on the agenda, do we have any comments, amendments, or additions to the minutes of September 8th meeting? Hearing none, they will stand as written. First item on the agenda, COVID-19 related club updates. Riley.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for updates in regards to the classes and clubs that have opened, water fitness and fitness classes have opened with limited participation as of October 5th. They've been running smoothly at the pools at Palm Ridge, R.H. Johnson, and of course the Palm Ridge facility. Lessons only dance classes are open up and running well for Western Square, Country Western, line dancing, and rock and roll. Club elections are going smoothly. Staff is assisting with virtual elections if needed by the clubs. Happy to do that. We can contact me or Phil. Phil will be out for a little while, so please have your club's reference or send their questions to me. November club schedules for in-person meetings and special events and social events have been canceled through December 1st. As construction is completed at Kuntz, we will be opening additional clubs located at that facility, be it basketeers and clubs like that. As soon as the facility is available, we will get those clubs opened. This is something I'd like to request everybody pass out to any members of the community or clubs, is we've had a request for a food drive. It's not going to be until March, but it's in conjunction with the Salvation Army. It'll be a drive-through food drive. That'll happen here at R.H. Johnson, and with the issues that the food bank is having and Salvation Army is having with people giving, we'd like everybody to get involved with that. Regarding reciprocal play, all reciprocal play has been canceled at this time. Please note that I just passed these out. It's the new reciprocal club agreement, and we've added a couple of lines to this so that it needs to be signed by either the general manager or the recreation activities manager of the reciprocal community, just to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. And the guest policy at this time is no outside guests. That will be to be determined as we deal with the COVID. Unfortunately, our numbers in the last few weeks have gone from right around the 6% to, as of this morning, 11.1% for Maricopa County. So it is on the rise. I know that there's quite a bit of activity at our local hospital in regards to COVID cases and at some of the other hospitals. So we just need to be very careful. And at this time, we're running at about a 50% capacity. We're going to keep everything status quo. And until that changes, there will be no outside guests. And the club meeting that generally we have all the club presidents attend, that's going to have to be virtual this year. We're going to send that out through MailChimp, and that'll be going out on November 9th.
November 9th, is that what you said, Riley?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
That'll be going out through MailChimp, so all the club officers will receive that for their review, and it is a mandatory to read it, and we can tell if you read it or not, so just so everybody knows. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, club liaison reports. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, thank you for pointing that out. Oh, got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ginny. Any other comments from the committee? Thank you. Next item, the club liaison reports. I'm sorry, Claudia. We'll do that at the end. Yes, comments at the end. Anybody, any of the liaisons have anything that they'd like to report? All right, hearing none, you'll see that the flow chart was attached to the agenda, and that's updated as a result of Danielle Smith, a committee member, had to remove herself from the committee. And also John D. from Palm Ridge, facility supervisor, has retired, and Jack Stroop, I hope I said his name okay, S-T-R-O-U-P, is now the facility supervisor for Johnson and Kuntz, and Dave Bennett is now the facility supervisor at Beardsley and Palm Ridge. Any questions or comments? All right, moving on to policy C03 for charter clubs. This was attached, and it was for your review, and I'd like to hear from the committee. Anybody have any questions or concerns regarding our obligations as a standing committee for charter clubs? Any questions, comments? All right, we will move on to Charter Club Committee goals. And number 1 goal, establish our Rrmps clarity for Charter Club's capital improvement requests by prioritizing safety, differentiating between needs and wants, and accounting for improvements versus replacements while maintaining consistency and equality between all chartered clubs. Number 1, any comments, questions from the committee? Number 2, establish our Rrmps clarity for financial commitments of charter clubs' capital project requests. Any comments or questions, concerns? Number 3, establish in our Rrmps charter club's option of virtual meetings using new technologies. Comments? Number 4, establish our Rrmps clarity to solve discrepancies in club member participation figures. Comments, concerns? Next, final, number 5, establish our Rrmps clarity to effectively disband charters of clubs with membership declines. Any comments, questions, concerns? All right, everybody. Moving on to...
I would have a question the way that's worded on number 5. Someone could decline but not be disbanded.
I'm sorry, Pete, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Clarity for me, if it declines, a lot of clubs move down, but they don't necessarily have to disband. So that 5 seems a little bit harsh. I would say more along that they don't meet the threshold.
Okay. You would like, instead of it saying with membership declines, with membership thresholds? Claudia, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Thresholds not being met?
However you want it. It's just any club could decline from 900 to 850, and you'd say they disband based on reading that.
All right, we will make that recommendation. Thank you, Pete. Any other comments, concerns? All right, moving on, new business, Rrmps and bylaws. First item on the agenda is the Rrmps hard copy, and I would just like to share with everyone that the reason why that hard copy has not been handed out yet is we are hoping to actually be able to add virtual meetings into that before we finish with the hard copy. And hopefully we will have that within the next 2 months before year end. So moving on to 6.02 virtual meetings. Judy, Thompson, and Lyanne, Hathaway.
You have in your packet the wording that we had decided on. and I'll read it for you, under chartered club meetings, and we changed it to chartered club meetings, not just membership meetings, because it can also affect board meetings. Chartered club meetings are meetings open to all club members for the purpose of reviewing club operations and conducting business. Clubs may choose virtual or in-person meetings. Virtual voting may be done by email, phone, Google Docs, Sign Up Genius, etc., and retained in club records. And then under CR3, the voting, down to number 3. We just took that same language that's in red and put it down there for voting. Any questions?
Comments? All right.
I have a comment. I don't know if this is the place to bring it up, but you mentioned Sign Up Genius, and I've come across a glitch with that. And what it is, how we found it is, my husband belongs to the wood shop, so he can go on through Sign Up Genius and sign up to monitor. Well, he's been doing that for quite a while, and all of a sudden now Palo Verde Patchers has been programming names and emails and things in for using Sign Up Genius when we get into the new room. Well, now if he tries to sign in through Sign Up Genius, because we only have one email that we both share, it automatically goes to Palo Verde Patchers. So it shuts him out. So, and I imagine as more clubs use Sign Up Genius, it's not on, we have quite a few members that, you know, they and their husbands share their email address. They don't each have individual ones. I don't know if there's a way in that glitch to get around it, but it might be something worth looking into, because it's like now he has to go completely different to try to go sign up to monitor at the wood shop.
My recommendation would be to have your own email address.
Yeah, no, I know, but I mean, there's just so many members that they don't, because it's just like, why do I want to, you have to delete 50 more things a day on another email? But I mean, but it seems like there ought to be a way you could just put your rec number in or something, even your name, that it would recognize.
If I can chime in, pretty much any piece of software these days is going to be relying on a email address.
Okay.
Each individual account is based on an individual email address. That's true with the rec center's accounts, with the rec center's golf portal, with the rec center's voting, with pretty much anything. So we do offer free training down in the Data Resource Center in the library for someone that needs help setting up an additional email account.
Yeah, okay. That's what I just wondered, if there was an easier way to just get around it than having to go through another whole account, but okay.
So do we have to vote on this then, or not? Are we done? No, I meant
Oh, I thought-
Donna, on our,
Okay, so where we're at right now is I need consensus from the committee to move forward to the governing board, the recommendation for the change to the Rrmps. And by consensus, all those in favor, aye.
aye.
Any nays? All right, we will move forward the recommendation for virtual meetings to be added to the Rrmps.
And we're not done yet.
Yes,
We actually
Judy.
then met with Riley and Phil and Katie on, if we move forward with this, are there things we should be doing, recommendations? And Lyanne, do you want to?
Yeah, we met with,
Put your.
Lyanne, please put your mic on.
sorry, we met with Katie and Riley and Phil, and it was a really good meeting because I think we level set. We all got on the same page as where we are at the committee, trying to drive this virtual, and where the staff are, and I think that really helped us get on the same page. So we discussed the fact that the rec staff uses Join Me for their teams, and at this point, they're not planning to expand that. We discussed Zoom, and then we reviewed what do the clubs need to accomplish by February 2021. And Phil and Riley are currently working with clubs to get elections done, and Katie and her staff are providing technical support as needed, and they are currently able to handle all the requests for if you want to do a virtual vote, if you want to do a virtual meeting. So based on that, and also Katie talked about that the rec staff is currently investigating a more advanced technology to really get to more of a global approach. So as a result of that, we decided that we're going to hold off until January 2021, what Judy and I are working with them, giving them an opportunity to, for basically Katie to look for a more global approach. So what I'd like to do is have Katie just kind of give us a quick little blurb about what she's looking at, and then maybe when she's done, Phil can tell us what they've been doing since we last met. But that was the result of that meeting.
Thank you, Lyanne. Katie?
Yeah, thanks, Lyanne. So we have kind of baby stepped into some of this with some of the clubs because each of their needs and their technical capabilities are unique. A one-size-all approach doesn't really work in this circumstance. We have clubs that are very capable and have valid email addresses for every single member. We have others that just don't even use email. So to try to say, here's the one solution that works for 100 and plus chartered clubs doesn't make a lot of sense. So the idea is that each club that has a challenge that they need assistance with will come to Riley and his team, and then Riley can approach the IT team here, and we'll step in and talk them through different possible solutions and find one that works for them and their membership. The idea being we don't want to disenfranchise any of their members who might have trouble voting online. So we do use Join Me here at the rec centers. We also have Teams, which is another online application. We haven't delved into Zoom so much just because of its vulnerabilities, but if there is a club that's absolutely what they want to do, we could step in and help them with that, but most of the ones using Zoom are already pretty capable. And then as far as a global approach, you know, this has come up again and again, and there's been a lot of rumors about the rec centers is going to have a piece of software we're going to install in every single club room and everybody's going to use it and it's going to work great. That again, the one size approach just doesn't really make sense. Some clubs have everything from inventory they keep track of to locker rentals to monitoring. Other ones just want to swipe in, swipe out. So we have been looking at this. We have been making some steps to get to that next level. Last year, we installed a clubs network in every single club room. So everyone has a hard-wired high-speed internet line. They can add their own Wi-Fi. They're all isolated, so they wouldn't interfere with each other. And then they have the capability to add on to that if they want to add computers or smart TVs or whatever. That's up to the club, again, based on what works for that individual club. So that club networks is done. It was completed last year. And then the next step to that, we are looking at some software. We're going to have to customize it and build it from scratch that would do sort of a two-layer authentication. Are you a valid rec centers member? Yes. Are you a valid member of this club? Yes. Then you can swipe in. So that's not something that's going to be delivered right away. Don't start telling everybody, hey, it's coming. It's something we're looking at. How much would it cost? How would we deal with the hardware? How would we handle the clubs that share a club space? Who's responsible for that hardware and the passwords and the user securities if stuff starts going missing? So there's a lot that still needs to be determined, but the first step is looking at the software development and getting some cost estimates.
And I think the key thing to hear what she said is that each individual club needs to be aware of the fact they need to contact Riley so that they can get them to the appropriate people to set them up, do what you need to do to get them electronic. I mean, I think that's the key message besides the research that they're doing. And I'm presuming all clubs know that because they're working with them.
Yeah, I will say Phil has been doing a great job communicating with the clubs through MailChimp. Had a great response rate to anytime he sends out an e-news to them. And through MailChimp, he and Martin are able to do voting as well. So I think they've been, handling some clubs that way as well, but I'm sure he can provide more information on that.
Thank you very much. That was very informative.
And I hope Phil would fill us in about what's been going on.
Yes, Phil?
Right now, like Katie said, Martin and I have worked out a deal. We're mostly handling right now is the voting and the virtual meetings in my office. I went to membership this morning, and almost 700 homes have changed hands since this pandemic hit.
Wow.
That means we're losing members in clubs, and we're not getting them back. So when this hopefully goes away, that we can, communicate to those people that let's join clubs and let's get Sun City West clubs up running again, all of them. But to answer your question, I just want to throw that stat in there this morning. I really did. To answer your question, we're doing a lot of voting right now. We're helping the clubs with voting. In fact, with Katie's help and Riley's help, we set up an email address that clubs can actually, when they send out their ballots, they can have their clubs respond to that email address. We've actually completed 4 elections so far, and we have 5 more on the agenda prior to the 1st of December. So that's kind of where we're at, and you know, I'm letting Katie handle that virtual thing. She does well at that, so.
Thank you, Phil. Any other comments? Yes, Riley?
I would just like to thank Phil for all the hard work he has put into this, being blindsided by COVID, excuse me. With this, he's been able to help the clubs exponentially in getting their meetings and things done. So he's done a wonderful job.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So Donna, comment on number 3 where it says clubs may choose virtual or in-person meetings. Virtual voting may be done by email, phone, Google Docs. If we could change the wording or tweak the wording to be a little more generic about, and not name a specific software, but say technology-assisted, whatever, voting. It would give us, we wouldn't have to change our RMPs every time we change Sign Up Genius or Zoom or all of those. So to go to something that's a little more generic that says virtually based or computer-based or internet-based voting systems. And, I mean, you guys did a great job. You'll come up with the right words.
Okay, so let us change the wording then so that we can move it forward to the governing board. Virtual voting may be done by,
Well, email, phone, and then it becomes technology-assisted software. Or other technologies. Is that, Katie, what do you think?
Because you could have text voting, there's all sorts of different ways. I would not narrow it down, just say technology-assisted solutions.
So it could say, or other technology-assisted software, and retained in the club records.
I would use solutions rather than software.
Solutions.
or other,
Technology-assisted solutions. It just means we don't have to change it next year when we have this committee meeting again. Of course, it does give us something to do, but.
okay, by email, phone, or other technology-assisted solutions.
Correct, yeah, and retained in club records.
So emails, I mean, everything has to be retained for verification or audit, correct?
Stating it is a good thing, though.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Tom, I need you to come to the mic.
Does that preclude paper ballots?
No, this is an option, may choose. So if they do not want to do virtual, they don't have to do virtual. This is an option, they may choose.
It's a definition of what virtual voting is.
Yeah.
We're defining virtual voting.
Correct.
Yes,
But maybe it needs to stay in there. Clubs may choose virtual, in-person, or paper ballots. Period. And then define what virtual voting is.
all right, so you want to add the word clubs may choose paper, comma, virtual, or in-person?
I'd probably put virtual last in the order that they happen.
Where would you put that?
In the first sentence, clubs may choose in-person, comma, paper, comma, or virtual meetings.
We're talking about voting. We're talking about voting.
Under voting, you're talking.
Number 3. Huh. So maybe we should say club voting.
and describe what we're talking about. Club voting may be done via paper ballot in meeting, well, that's a paper ballot, or maybe you could have show of hands or something, or virtual. The second sentence just defines what virtual voting is, and we're good with that.
Right, in person and paper seems to me to be the same thing.
No, because I could raise my hand.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Madam Chair, oh, I have a red light. I don't think I need, Madam Chairman, one of the things, if you would go down to number 4, instead of defining it, number 4 says, reference Robert Rules of Order for assistance in parliamentary procedures. And that normally would cover paper ballots, proxy, everything else that would fall underneath the in-betweens on this. I think it'd be redundant to redefine exactly what it would be. Just my own opinion.
What did you want to say? I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
At number 4, if you go down, if you read down this thing, it says reference Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order provides everything for paper ballots, balloting, virtual voting that goes along with this. So I just feel that you're trying to redefine exactly what they're saying already.
Can I suggest you maybe change it to clubs wishing to pursue non-traditional voting may do so with the approval of the recreation manager? So that opens the door to it, but also makes sure nobody gets really weird, disenfranchises anybody, and the rec manager doesn't know anything about it.
What about if we just said clubs may choose virtual or in-person meetings or voting? I mean, then Robert's Rules covers the rest, doesn't it?
So my only concern, again, is if somebody has a very new technology or little used virtual way of voting and they try to force that into the club and too many people can't use that technology, it's probably not a good idea. So if you just open it up to non-traditional methods of voting with the approval of the rec manager, that should work in perpetuity no matter what new technologies are developed.
Just,
Lyanne?
yeah, just to make sure I'm clear here. So if we're looking at number 3, where we just tried to address the whole virtual thing because of COVID, but I think George's point here about Robert's Rules, so maybe it's just a matter of referencing Robert's Rules for voting applications, and if there's anything outside of that, then contact, the whomever to see if that's going to be applicable. That might simplify it and driving everybody to the same rules, and if it doesn't fit, then they need to, whoever you would suggest that they go to. That, I don't know, I was just trying to clarify it, because it sounds like we're back to what's virtual, and then we go to Robert's Rules, and then, what's traditional, how do you define that? It just seems like it's simpler to reference, Robert's Rules for voting types, better word than. Procedures, thank you. And if anything if you want to vote anything outside of what Robert's Rules covers, then you need to contact somebody and say, can we do this or whatever. Am I making sense or not?
I'm looking for good language.
Well, you're making a lot of sense. I think that we have to also make some consideration for the population that we are. And even when you say to me, Robert Rules, I say to myself, well, when were they updated last? Are they updated? Are they virtual? How do I find out if they're virtual? I really would like to support Katie's language in that if the clubs can partner with the rec centers, not that the rec center is going to be in control or oversee, that's not the intent. It's to come alongside, to partner, to make sure that everybody's comfortable with whatever technology we're using today. So I do humbly disagree, George, that we might need to define it just for our own population. And that could be just indigenous to us.
I
Katie?
do believe that a club has the right to make its own decision about how they're going to vote. So I don't know if it's necessary, and only from a standpoint of guidance, to go to the rec manager for whatever. No offense, but we get our bylaws approved, and it says what our voting process is. So we just go about doing it.
So if your bylaw is approved and it says with your voting process, you have already conferred with the rec centers.
Yes.
So you have conferred with the the club has conferred with the rec centers. It's already happened, and it's not a big surprise. What we may be seeing, and I know that there's been some surprises lately that haven't been pleasant. And so that's what I think what we're trying to avoid. But you did it, Claudia. You said it correctly, is that we have these bylaws. This is already, and when you change that voting method, it's going to have to be reapproved by whoever does that approval.
I don't know, I suppose it depends on what they have in their bylaws. And I don't know everybody's rules.
Well, they've
That's the
been
whole
approved.
point.
As
Yeah,
the,
right.
as the RRMPs change, we will have to incorporate the RRMPs into the club bylaws, which
Right.
we've done with the disciplinary action as well. Requires Phil and Dory to go through all 104 clubs and install that within their bylaws and then send them back out to you. So this wording is going to be important for us to be putting into the bylaws for the clubs.
Do you have recommendations?
If you use the phrase non-traditional voting, in 5 years, virtual voting is going to be traditional. So it's vague enough that at the beginning of the election cycle, Riley's team could put something out that says, these are all acceptable ways, have at it. But if someone wanted to say, vote by swiping your phone, and you have to have a smartphone to vote, that's not great if you have a very not tech club. So that's why I just thought non-traditional methods of voting with their approval or with their something, just so you're not saying you have to vote this method whether you have this piece of technology or not. Not that most clubs would do that, but some might.
May I say, I think that, I agree with Ginny. I think that for most clubs, what we really should be trying to do is make things clear and concise and simple, so the average person that, they come here, they've from all different walks of life, they end up being a club member, a club officer. They haven't dealt with Robert's rules, but every time you have to go back and read some other thing, and then that refers you to something else, after a while they say, forget it. They're not going to do it. Just keep it clear, keep it simple, where they can understand it. And I think you have more success with them following it. If they have a question, if it comes up to the point where there's really some tension in the club over how we're doing this, then they can always go up to Katie or the officers and say, is this right, or can we do this, or can't we do it? But when we start getting too much into here, it becomes too confusing.
Perhaps we could say, club voting may be non-traditional, in parentheses, paper, ballot, or virtual, and that's i.e., not, or e.g., not i.e. It doesn't have to be specific, but those are some examples. And then continue on with it. And then you can also say virtual voting may be done by mail or phone or other technology-assisted solutions. That gets it. And it's long-term, because it doesn't say you have to use that, it's just, those are the current ones, and those are examples.
How about if we say clubs may choose in-person, virtual, or traditional or non-traditional methods? Then you've covered everything, haven't you?
Well, there's the meetings and then there's the votes. So Robert's Rules doesn't talk about virtual voting at all. It talks about the parliamentary procedure of who goes when and how the meeting operates in terms of the timeline. So if you've got the meetings covered, virtual or in person, that's fine. But I think what you need to focus on is the voting part and
Okay.
leave it flexible enough so 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you don't have to change the RRPs because everybody's doing virtual voting, but some new people are doing microchip voting or something like that.
So what is your recommendation, Katie?
Start with
Virtual?
number 3, period. I will write it down.
Well, I would leave that first sentence, club may choose virtual or in-person meetings, period, that's very clear. Voting may be by paper, ballot, or other traditional means, or generally accepted technology-assisted solutions.
Claudia, did you get that?
I'm working on it. So that second sentence, you said virtual voting may be done by email, phone, or no, by paper ballot or other technical means is what you said, right?
Yeah, voting may be done by paper ballot
Or other technical means, you
or,
said.
or generally accepted technologically assisted, something like that, solutions.
Oh, all right, so can we just say other technologically assisted solutions?
Like we did above.
Okay,
I like the generally accepted because that implies consensus. And we don't get these, we're going to have offshoot, strange things showing up. So generally accepted, while it's big and broad, it's also says that somebody's looked at it.
and retained in club records.
Right. Can you read it back?
Not quite yet, no. Generally accepted.
Is
Okay.
there a length we have
Clubs
to,
may-
a length of
clubs-
time we have to retain the records?
Yes.
Clubs may choose virtual or in-person meetings. Virtual voting may be done by paper ballot or other generally accepted, technically assisted solutions and retained in club records.
Yeah, get rid of the first virtual. So voting may be
Yeah.
in person, comma, by ballot, comma, or other generally accepted technologically assisted solutions.
Ballot.
Paper.
Paper
Yeah.
ballot.
In
So the word
person, paper
has to
ballot,
go
or
in there.
blah, 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 yeah.
I think you said traditional. Traditional was in there somewhere. I wrote that down.
The problem with using the word traditional, as Katie pointed out, in 3 years it becomes non-traditional becomes traditional. So putting those words into a statement doesn't allow for the future. If we say non-traditional voting means, in 3 years, she's absolutely correct, we're all going to be voting virtually. And by the way, I got 2 presidential ballots. Does that mean I get to vote twice?
Okay, what I have is virtual voting may be done.
No virtual.
No.
Or, I'm sorry, yes. Voting may be done in person, by paper ballot, or other generally accepted technology-assisted solutions, and retained in club records.
So why are we not putting in there is there a ruling on how long they have to be retained? Is it 7 years?
That's all part of the bylaws.
Part of the bylaws.
Some say 3, some say 7.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, then we need to, as defined by bylaws, needs to, I mean, that sentence to me I keep going, well, what's the rest of the sentence?
As defined by club bylaws.
Correct. I'm sorry, Phil, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I just.
Claudia, would you reiterate what we are moving forward to the governing board?
Donna,
Vote,
can I ask a question?
Yes, Tom?
If we, just an example. So we sent out an email, but not everybody has emails, so we have to write letters to the ones that don't have emails. So that is covered in that because of the choices. Is that correct? Thank you.
Claudia's writing. I'm waiting for Claudia to finish writing.
And there are ways for clubs, while you're writing, Claudia, Tom, there are ways for clubs to not have to send something postage every time. If we had an annual calendar for the club, and pick voting day. I mean, we all know when we're going to vote, pretty much, in our clubs, don't we? I mean, do we? Know when we vote in our clubs? A certain, like the month of December or the month of whatever, and that would be put on an annual calendar. You've met the intent. Put it on your calendar now, we're voting in November. Doesn't that meet the intent? So you have one mailing. I'm a big fan of mailing because of people who don't have email or don't choose to use technology, but I don't need to tell them every time if I have given them an annual calendar. Is that correct or not?
Madam Chairman, Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Ginny,
President.
to that point, each individual club's bylaws specifically tell them when and how they're going to vote and who they're going to vote for. I don't think a broad brush approach to that would be the appropriate idea. Each club is different.
Correct. No,
Each
no,
club
no.
has their annual meeting. Each club needs to have their own quorum. Each club needs to do each individual thing as they see fit on their calendar.
You're 100% correct. We're saying the same thing differently.
You were just saying you want an individual day for everybody to.
Well, I implied that, yes.
Yeah.
What you're saying to me, if I hear you correctly, is those are already preset by the bylaws. And sure, that's the point. The point I was trying to address was Tom's point of, do we have to send something by mail every time, 4 or 5 times a year, and incur that cost? And the answer is probably no.
Well, the issue would be is that when you have a club that's going to say, we have your annual meeting, your quarterly meeting or whatever, it's posted, it's sent out, whether it's electronic or whatever, it is. It is not our obligation to chase down people to come to meetings. It is our obligation to provide the information for when the meeting is going to happen.
Thank you.
Claudia?
The last I understood, the first sentence is now scratched. So we start with, voting may be done in person, by paper ballot, or by generally accepted other technologically assisted solutions retained in club records as defined by club bylaws.
Well, the first sentence wasn't scratched, it's referencing meetings, so I think it was fine the way it stood,
Clubs may choose virtual or in-person meetings.
period, yeah.
All right?
And I think you don't need to say as defined in club bylaws. I think it's just in club records, period, is fine.
Okay.
Okay, can we have it again?
Number 3, club may choose virtual or in-person meetings. Voting may be done in person, by paper ballot, or generally accepted other technologically assisted solutions retained in club records.
Perfect. All those in favor of moving that forward to the governing board workshop?
Aye.
Any nays?
I just want it to be noted too, because up at the top where they changed it, does that also, that sentence on virtual voting, does that need to be the same? In charter club meetings are open to all members. Because we started with saying that Google Docs, Sign Up Genius, et cetera, or it should say virtual voting may be done by email, phone, or other technologically assisted solutions. And we could also say, or other generally accepted
Right,
technologically
we need
assisted.
to have the same
Language in
sentence,
both.
same language in both. And again, I want to make it clear that this 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are what is going to be incorporated in the sample bylaws. What we are forwarding to the workshop is the RRMP definition, charter clubs meetings. And again, what we just said is the sentence that replaces the second sentence of that definition. Voting may be done in person, by paper ballot, or other,
Or generally accepted other technologically assisted solutions retained in
and
club records.
retained in club records. Yes. Any other comments? All right. We are done with virtual meetings. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, capital projects financial. And this is Claudia and Otto. And I'd like to just first say that Claudia and Otto Colorado presented their information at our last meeting, and we had a great discussion on that. And that information was provided to staff, and staff basically has sent us back to the drawing board. And so what was attached here under capital projects is the beginning of a draft of what can be included in the RRMPs for better clarity on capital projects. So as a committee, we need to have discussion and figure out what language can help clubs and the association with better clarity on capital projects. Claudia, would you like to start?
Okay, the idea, and what we're looking at now is the capital projects, this page, right. I wasn't really prepared at this point to speak because I thought that,
I can go ahead if you prefer.
Go ahead.
Okay, so just generally speaking, association shall be responsible for any safety issues, maintenance and repair, replacement of like kind when necessary, new capital projects that benefit the community. In contrast, charter clubs shall be responsible for improvements and expansion of club facility space. Clubs must substantiate need by proving, first, maximum utilization of facility space through scheduling and participation. Next, they need to prove an inability to meet their membership demand, and again, their continued membership growth. Moving on to finance, the association and clubs shall be totally responsible as stated above. The association may assist clubs with financing. The association may contribute if a club facility space is shared, and clubs sharing facility space may share in financial responsibility for improvements and expansion. And again, the note is clubs are responsible for equipment and supplies used for club activities. Association is responsible for equipment shared by all members of association, such as tables, chairs, etc. So, I'd like to have comment and input from the committee as far as this language being added to the RRMPs, giving better clarity and understanding for clubs.
Well, my initial reaction is it doesn't reflect the use of the form CR 13A and CR 13B, and there is no distinction in terms of budget amounts in excess of $5,000. And I don't know if that's necessary or not, but it sure seemed to be when we had our meetings before. So that was the first thing that came to my mind. And the fourth item under Section 1, new capital projects that benefit the community, as followed on by improvements and expansion of club facility space, is a charter club responsibility. But if they say, well, if it's my responsibility, and they go about doing it like they did at the Metal Club, without the authority, then what you end up with is a shed with water going down through the middle with electrical equipment out there. And so I think that opens up a whole bag of worms in terms of what's being said there. And I also think that these buildings are not the club's buildings. These buildings belong to the entire community. So for the club to have the full responsibility for an expansion or improvement of any facility space is something that they don't keep, nor do they, if invest in it, do they get any, if they, normally, if you take on something, you end up selling it, and you take the risk of whether or not you get your money back, but at least you get your money back. There's no consideration for that. So if a dying club, for instance, who put, let's say, $100,000 into an expansion or whatever, do they get their money back? I mean, that seems only reasonable. I think that is totally unfair language. The responsibility for having public space is on the shoulders of the community, if it's a community space, if it's regulated by the community, if the authority is given by the community leaders as opposed to the club owners or club board. So I totally think this is high, really, just not natural thinking. You know, I understand that you're trying to limit the costs, and I understand that you're trying to manage in a contained space. But I think that if you're really concerned about that, then you really have to take a hard look at what clubs should actually be functioning and which ones not, which ones are not really meeting the threshold, and how quickly do they get out so that there makes more room for somebody else. That's my opinion.
Any other comments?
Madam President, what if that
Yes,
just said
Judy.
under chartered clubs, if it just said suggesting improvements and expansion of club facilities?
You just want to add the word suggested?
Under charter clubs may be responsible for, that first line would be just suggesting improvements and expansion rather than being totally responsible for it. I don't know, just a thought.
That's certainly an improvement over what currently is there, and it's more in line with this, because a suggestion can be turned down. I like it. Good thinking, Judy.
Is that the only suggestion? Otto? Ginny? Lyanne? Judy, you've already said Karen? Anita? So,
There is no, definition around safety issues. There's no definition around maintenance and repair, replacement of like kind, that kind of stuff. Is it necessary? Does there need to be an example? You know, I think that Russ was in here and told us if it's a safety problem, he's going to take care of it because that's his professional opinion, period.
right.
So I don't know as we need to have anything in there, but it certainly is something that could be added. If it helps clarify for the person who is a leader in a club who would like to have their improvements made, and they may be based on a safety need or a maintenance need.
So Claudia, where would you add the language for the CR 13A and B, or 13, CR 13?
Well, I think the charter clubs have to be responsible for submitting a CR 13A or B, or A and B, and that initiate, to initiate improvements, suggested improvements and expansion for a club facility space.
Claudia, were you concerned about this, the general statement up there about safety issues? You wanted that expanded a little bit to say safety issues as determined by the safety officer? Or is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, the issue with safety in this, if the association is responsible for it,
Right.
and they're not involved in the day-to-day operation, and let's say a club has a bunch of new leaders, and they don't realize when you file a safety report, what needs to go in it, or when it is submitted and there's never any loop that comes back to the club saying, look, if you have this tripping hazard here on a regular basis, you need to change that up, and this is what we're recommending. That doesn't happen currently. So there's a lot of stuff that's reported, and it goes into a vacuum, and then there's no improvement made. Now, what can happen is another safety concern comes along, it's reported, or it's not reported. So, somebody was tripped over the mat, That doesn't change the problem. So I think and I don't see that is addressed here at all. I mean, if they're responsible, then it has to be not just looking at it, but actually preventing it from happening again. And what does that include? Communication, changes to layout, something in the way in which things are in the club, and and is the club responsible for it? Is it considered to be an improvement, or is this really a safety problem, and it has to be fixed by the
So you're
association?
kind of talking more that safety issues as identified with something to do with verification of compliance. I'm just brainstorming, wording's not good here. I'm just trying to because we're talking about the association shall be responsible for identifying safety issues and then making recommendations to complete them and then ensuring that they are then put into compliance. That's kind of the process you're talking about. And you want that a little bit clearer.
That's the intent of the OSHA law,
Right.
yeah.
But you're just saying you want that a little bit clearer to make sure that that process gets in place.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's not happening now. I
Right. So
mean,
we could make it in here, but can this committee make a recommendation to whomever? I don't know if it would be the CEO or, whomever, to make sure that that process, that we're asking that process be defined better and follow through?
Again, we have to be careful. It's not our job to say operations. It is our job to say what needs to happen as far as if there is a safety issue, the association is responsible for handling that safety issue.
Yeah, and-
we don't get to tell the association how to handle the safety or how to fix it.
Yeah, I
We
wasn't,
just
yeah,
say-
I wasn't suggesting that. My intent was to say if the clubs don't know that loop is there and closed, all we're saying is we're asking for whomever is appropriate to say, give feedback as to if that. We're not telling them to do it, we're just making a request that, there's not clarity on that loop, on the closing of the safety issues. I mean, they may choose not to respond, they may whatever. We're just saying there's lack of clarity, and we're asking for some clarity on that close-up loop. Because I think it's relevant, especially with this age group, that these safety issues that clubs know that they're being closed, it's up to the safety officer to decide what to do or whatever. But if we're tripping, if we're slipping, if we, doing things like that, not good, So I'm just agreeing with her that not having knowledge whether these safety issues are being closed, I think, is a significant issue. That's just my opinion.
The maintenance loop is closed because whatever's broken gets fixed. You have that. It's concrete. But with safety, it's a black hole. You submit your form, that's the end of it. We don't know what happens with it. We don't know if this is a trend in other places. Now, there are inherent risks with each kind of club. So some things, they may say, well, this is an inherent risk. We work with glass. Guess what? People cut their fingers all the time, okay? So the preventive measure is to make sure there's something there to control the bleeding. And we don't report that every time it happens, because there would be 15 reports a day, and it's not preventable. When you're going to work with glass, you're going to have these problems. So, but the rest
How
of it.
would you change? What would you say there, Claudia? For safety issues?
I'd have to think about it because I have to go back and look at OSHA requirements, but there's definitely a loop there in the, they just need to follow the law.
Well, but that's not our responsibility. I'm just saying that we pass this off to whomever the appropriate leadership is. And, I mean, it's their job to have a safety person, their job to make sure it's compliant with OSHA, whatever. Our question is, how do our clubs now know that safety issues, the loop is closed? That's our question. I mean,
Yes, but the problem is that safety issues are not, they may be responsible for addressing safety issues, but in fact, they don't know it's a safety issue until a club initiates a report.
I see.
That's the whole point. So there's the part about ensuring that safety is an important element of any club operation. Okay, they're responsible for that, maybe. But in terms of what that means, the whole loop, as far as the law is concerned, is that it leads to either identifying and correcting problems, and then that loop has to be closed, and that's part of the communication. So maybe it's something about identifying and correcting safety issues with the assistance of input from clubs or something. I don't know.
How
I'd have
about
to look at it.
safety issues that are reported or observed by association or club?
Madam Chairman?
Yes,
Madam
Mr.
Chairman,
President.
if I may be remiss, I think all clubs have a safety officer. And if the safety officer isn't reporting anything up the chain, how do we know to fix it? That's the question, okay? And Claudia, I hear what you're saying about who's in charge of it, but the realistic expectation is that's why we have a safety officer in each club, to identify an issue that may be an issue there and let us know that it needs to be fixed. Until we know, it's like going to the dentist. If you don't know what tooth hurts, he can't fix it. And I'm just saying that the people in place in our clubs are supposed to be there observing and filling out a form or whatever they need to do if there's an issue there.
Okay,
and
so-
moving forward, if it's an issue that's a safety issue, then the association has the ability to fix it. Until we know we can't fix it, I'm just asking the question.
Well, I think-
Following up on that, a safety issue to me doesn't, I wouldn't submit a safety issue on a capital project or a request form. If you have an issue with a safety issue, you should call the safety officer or whoever's at the rec center to fix that. And if he recommends that we need a complete flow change here and that requires a capital request, then you think that's when you would do it. But if it's a slipping problem or, that's why we're talking safety issues and trying to match that with a capital project form.
Right.
Well, I have a question. I have a question. I'm new, so bear with me.
Yes, Anita.
Is this being added to the RMPs?
Yes.
Okay, so I think what they're talking about, just looking at it quickly here, the capital, they're just defining what a capital project or who's going to be responsible for the capital project itself. So when I see safety issues, I'm thinking that the association is saying that if a sidewalk buckles because a tree stump goes under there, that's a safety issue. They're going to take care of that. It's not going to be a club's responsibility, even if it's outside the club's door. So I think that they're just saying that all capital projects that fall under a safety issue is going to be handled by the association. I think that's what they're saying. I don't think they're saying that we have to explain what the safety issue is or tell them what the safety issue is or anything like that. I think they're just saying, they're just explaining the fact that the association will take care of it if it falls under a safety issue and becomes a capital project. That's my understanding of what this paper is saying.
Do you have to submit a form to get that done?
Sorry. I would think that the form would fall under, if it's a club requesting something to be fixed and it's a safety issue. But if it's just a safety issue, like I said, a tree stump is making a sidewalk go up, the association is paying for that, whether it's a capital project or not. They're fixing it. But if, like, let's say, for example, I don't know, a safety issue, I don't know, maybe a piece, the wood or something on the floor, wood floor in your in your room needs to be done or something like that, then you're reporting that, but you're going to report it under your club things that I'm looking right at here. It says, you know, that you have to report safety issues, blah, blah, blah. That's already in the, it's already in there. So it's already explaining to the club what we need to do for a safety issue.
Right.
They're just explaining who's going to pay for the safety issue. That's just what I'm reading here from this.
Yes. And that is
Well, it's not saying paying for it, it just says it's responsible for safety issues. It's very,
Sorry, but this is under capital projects, so I'm assuming it's a safety issue that's going to be over $1,000 or whatever that
5,000.
capital project
5,000.
is, 5,000. So I'm assuming that's all they're addressing, is that if it's a capital project that's over $5,000 and it's a safety issue, it's the association's responsibility, not the club's responsibility. That's what I'm understanding from this piece of paper.
sounds good.
Very good.
It's not very clear here, though. I mean, just putting it as a bullet like this, I don't know, what, are we supposed to write more to it, or, I don't know. I don't know what the challenge is to do, honestly, I don't.
So Claudia, perhaps, I mean, you nailed it, Anita, and that this is a one-page overview of a capital project and who's responsible for what. Perhaps the next step is this committee or another committee needs to look at then, if you have a safety issue, the procedures that
But
go
that
with
is
No, that's what-
defined in
There's
the
no place in
RRMP.
this document for the procedures and the loop and the
in the
algorithms.
bylaws.
Right,
and
and we,
those things.
and we really talked to Russ about that, and I think, and Pete. And so that was the part was rejected. So it's not a procedural thing that they want, and that's fine. So, okay, so I don't know what you want to do next, but,
Madam President, may I make a suggestion
Yes,
about
Judy.
that first line under chartered clubs? What if it said to initiate CR 13A and B for suggested improvements and expansion of club facility space over $5,000? And that takes both parts. Just a thought.
So we would say charter clubs shall be responsible.
for initiating a CR 13A
And B, or whatever.
and possibly B.
For suggested improvements and expansion of club facilities over $5,000.
Well, that would be the B.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chairman, as redundancy, it's a capital project, which is what it would fall under already beforehand.
Right. She was just mentioning that wasn't anywhere in there, the 5,000. I don't know, maybe it doesn't need to be there.
It could just be included under the heading where we have capital project requests.
Then the other part of it then is when it says clubs substantiate need by proving, okay, participation. There is an issue with the attendance report, which they call a participation report, which really is attendance. It's not a participation. I don't think it's defined. To me, participation is, as an example, with the computer club, when we were all competing for space, they would say, well, we have 1,300 members in our club. And that's defined as someone coming in and dropping off their computer, and maybe 20 of the people would take a class. So what's participation and what is membership or?
Okay, Claudia, let me stop you right there, just because we will discuss that. That's the next item on the agenda, and Anita will talk about the membership and participation there. But in moving forward on the capital projects, why don't we bring this forward at the next meeting after everyone, I would like everyone to think more about it, and I I will try to maybe meet with staff and discuss the comments that were made today from the committee, and again, try to do some updating on this form, and we can discuss capital projects again at our next meeting in November.
I
Yes,
think that's
go ahead.
fine. I do think it's interesting that in the report, these two ladies were able to have access to the staff and a meeting, but I understand that we're not. Otto and I are not. I don't know why that is, if we have a similar task, but it's very hard for us to move forward when we don't have face-to-face. I think that you said it was very beneficial, and so.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I would like to see that Otto and I would be able to participate in that, but if we're not
Right.
able to, I really am not interested in doing any
No,
of
I
that.
will, when I talk to Riley and schedule a meeting, I will definitely have you and Otto included in that meeting, and we'll have a meeting specifically to address capital projects and finance with staff so that we have a better understanding of what we need to address in the RRMPs.
Okay?
Okay?
I'm raising my hand.
Yes,
Could you
Judy.
just define for me somewhere along the way, and it could be beyond my own naiveness, the purpose of the document we're talking about versus the purpose of the procedures of how to do those things? Because in my head, they're two separate things, but I could be, maybe they need to be blended, maybe they need to be separate. And if this one-page document is a one-page overview document, I'm cool with that, because it makes sense. And then to look at the procedures. So perhaps you could, not, maybe in an email, I don't care.
Okay, no.
Define that for me.
This was brought forward to the committee on capital projects because there is so much inconsistency and misunderstanding between all clubs as to who's responsible for what. And it was requested that some guidelines be established so that clubs would, when they wanted something, they would know right from the get-go, are we going to be responsible for this, or is the association going to be responsible? And what information do we need to be able to provide in order to justify our request? And that's what we're trying to establish here.
And then it kind of went, that's what you kind of told us, is that somehow it got to this. You know, I never was in the process here where all of this came up. Was there another group of people that met to come up with all of this?
Yes,
And it wasn't us?
right.
The CR
This might
third,
as well be in French or Swahili.
right, well, the CR third, in fact, we can move on the agenda. Let's move to the CR forms. And this is on the agenda under
7:02.
7:02. And again, the, what I have attached there are the CR forms that have been updated, and this is basically updated by staff. Because again, the CR forms is a procedural, operational thing, and the staff said, okay, under capital projects, the beginning is a CR 13. And so this was evaluated and updated basically through the summer before the assignment was made on capital projects to you and Claudia Otto. And the staff, the changes that were made to the CR 13 has been received by staff as an incredible improvement for understanding for clubs in their process in making requests for capital projects. But again, this is more operational. And what I have requested from the committee is more RRMP for definition and clarity in this process. Does that help?
So a club wanting improvements shall complete a CR 13, A or B if appropriate. If it's over 5,000 is the R and B.
Right. Again, CR forms is staff, it's operations. It's not us, the committee. And,
It's a good form. I mean, I have no problem with it.
yeah, it's,
Are we supposed to accept the forms? Or
yes.
I think we should.
The forms have, been already updated on the website for charter clubs. In addition to, you saw the attachment of a CR 16. Again, this was through staff, and this was created as a result of member conduct that we moved forward to the governing board, and governing board approved it to be added to the RRMPs. And again, this CR 16 was then incorporated to help with that new guidelines in the RRMPs for member conduct. Okay? All righty. So we'll go back to,
So do you want to get the consensus on the forms, since you've already discussed it?
I don't know that I need to have consensus.
Okay.
Because it was approved by staff, and this is a staff project. All right, next item, since we moved forward to.
Club websites.
Let me clarify, what's our goal now? Our goal is to get together with people and
Your goal right now is I will
type in
schedule.
RFPs that are aligned with this.
Yes, this is a beginning. This is a start for us to look at language to be added into the RRMPs that give better clarity to clubs as far as what is required and what they need to understand will happen with a request for capital projects. And I will work with Riley in setting up a meeting for you, Claudia, and myself, and probably Dory, Phil, and Riley to discuss this, and then we'll present it at our next meeting. Okay.
Club
Number
websites.
8.
Club websites, 701.
Oh, thank you.
Donna, I'm going to ask you to skip up to mine because I have an.
Okay. Anita needs to make her presentation because she needs to leave. So we'll go back to the club website. Let us have Anita now.
Okay, so I was assigned to the membership and participation club, and the person I was assigned with, she resigned right after I did. So just so you know, I have not had a meeting with anybody. I have not really, and I've only been at one of these meetings, so don't beat me up too bad, okay? So the beginning of this, when Donna first assigned me to this, I had had a little conversation. I think her name was Danielle. Danielle, okay. And my understanding of what we were tasked to do was to figure out the membership and the participation, the best way for the clubs to collect these numbers, and then also what these numbers are used for. And my understanding is the membership is used for whether or not the charter club is a chartered club, okay? The participation, I would think, would fall into place when a club comes to the association and says, we need a bigger room. So now we have to figure out the utilization of the space to see if the participation warrants the utilization of a bigger space or needing a bigger space or an expansion or whatever. So that was my understanding of those two numbers, first of all, as to what the numbers were for. Plus, the participation would also warrant under the capital purchase part. But I didn't go under that. I just kind of ignored that for now. But, so my first thought was, and Donna and I have had a conversation, but my first thought was, I don't even know if the membership and participation are going to be good numbers at this point based on something Phil just said. 700 houses are gone, and so club members are going to be different. So a membership in a club that was really good last year might not be very good this year. So I think I need to be clarified, first of all, like, where are we going with these numbers right now with COVID? I mean, what good are they going to be doing if I take them now or if I figure out how to do them? I want to meet with Phil so that we can kind of figure out the best way to get these numbers, because I understand, based on conversation that happened at this meeting last time, I guess we have clubs, in order to keep their charter, they have other people becoming members, but maybe they're not participating members, but their membership numbers are up. You mentioned earlier one of the clubs, I can't remember which one you were talking about, the computer club, and I agree that, if you go in there to get your computer fixed, they want you to become a member. So now all of a sudden I'm a member, but I get my computer fixed and I walk away. Do I ever participate in anything with the club? No. So I think we need to justify what these numbers are going to be used for and then how to gather them. So the only thing that I've done so far is I kind of looked at the Rrmps. I looked at what we had, and I only have a couple suggestions that we can talk about right now, and then I would like to meet with somebody or have somebody else on this committee with me to go forward. But, so the first thing I looked at was, I kind of think that some of the club charters, I think longevity has to be in part of what we look at when we determine a club's charter, I think anyway. I mean, if you have a club that's been in existence forever, and they don't take up a lot of space, nobody's requiring their room and everything else, even though their membership dwindles, should we automatically disband the charter? So I wanted to recommend that under Chapter 2, Section 1, so I don't know where that is anyway, but anyway, I am suggesting we add to the language, maintaining a club's charter is dependent on the club's membership, active participation, and longevity of the existing club charter. Just to add that in there so that when we're talking about disbanding a charter or something like that, maybe that could be in consideration if the charter's been in existence for 35 years. Like I said, they're sitting in a room that nobody wants, they're not bothering anybody, but their membership's down. So why not let them still be, because I thought part of this was being a social club. So I just thought I'd add that in there for that. So that was my first recommendation. The second recommendation I thought was that the charter membership, as far as the participation end of it goes, mainly for when you're asking for a larger room or something like that. So I thought, to me, that fell under the benefits of being a chartered club, because the very first benefit of being a chartered club says you can use the facility. It doesn't say anything else. It just says basically that you have use of the facility. So I thought under Chapter 2, Section 3, the benefits of a full charter should remain the same. So that first section should say the same, but I suggest we add language to A, B, and C that says, providing a club meets a participation percentage, and I didn't put a percentage in there because I'm not sure, I'd like to meet with somebody else and talk about what that should be, of their membership associated with assigned facility space that meets multiple criteria, including participation, equipment requirement, and available room accommodations. So those are the only two things that I came up with after looking at all of this and being, I mean, like I said, I never even got a chance to meet with Danielle, so I really wasn't even sure what my task was under this participation. So that's where I'm at. So, okay, beat me up.
Okay, let's first find someone who would like to join you in this task, Anita. And okay, Tom, do you want to? All right. So Anita and Tom will
Thank you.
work together on that. Okay,
Madam
so,
Chair?
yes, Claudia.
I think this is really a great start, and I love the idea. I think that is really what's missing in terms of the stats of participation, is a percentage of the people who actually attend or do things based on the total membership, what percentage, And then there needs to be a threshold for what is acceptable participation. You know, like when you do a marketing survey, they say if you get 10% back, you know, that's a great survey, okay? Well, if we say if we get 25% of our people that come to an event, and you want to predict that you need space for a certain number of people, you say, well, on average, like our social events, half the people come, okay? Sometimes it's just a bad day. It's different people that come to different things, but it's about half the people always. So, you know, is it 75%? No, that seems really high. 15% or 10% seems really low. It's somewhere in there. And I think when you do that, and that we have numbers to make that happen. Now, you could also add to it, as I understand that, you know, because monitors are now going around and counting up, of course, they come. It's kind of like all data, you know, at a moment in time, you have this many people actively involved in the club. And that, if that's right on the hour and 5 minutes later, you have 15 people show up and they leave before the next hour up, you know, those people were there and they were doing something and maybe it was short term for the time. You know, I don't think duration has anything to do with it. I think it's about actually having presence there, because sometimes you just need 5 minutes to pick up something because you're working on it and you're going somewhere to do it, you know.
Yeah, I think that I understood that the task of this committee was kind of to figure out the best way to get the numbers of participation. And like I said, I haven't even addressed that yet. And I do have some ideas in my head, but I'd like to run it off with somebody. So I'm glad I have a partner now.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's two different numbers, really. I think membership necessarily, if I have 100 members in my club, but if, again, it's like the computer club or some of the other clubs that I can think of off the top of my head would be like ceramics, things like that, that I might become a member, but all I do is go to fire my ceramics. I never go down there because I'm not a social person, but I want to get someplace to get my thing.
Exactly.
My husband does basket weaving, but he might join a basket weaving club only to get the supplies at a cheaper rate than he can get them on his own.
Right.
But he'd never even go to a club meeting. So the membership to me is different than the participation. So like I said, I think my first task was to figure out what the numbers were going to be used for. And my first guess was membership is for the charter, participation is for if I'm asking for a capital project or if I want a bigger room. So we have to determine how we're going to collect those numbers and then how we use those numbers. That would be my thought of what my task is.
And I agree with that. I think the health of the club is also dependent upon participation. Because if someone joins the club and never comes in at all or something, that tells you there's something that they're not liking about the club. You know, and it is, if it's a social club or if it's a craft club or whatever it is, and they're not involved somehow, then, you know, some people, they work at home, they have their own studio at home, but they come in and they socialize with people and stuff like that, and they pick up patterns or they do whatever for a little while. That is an indication of a healthy relationship. And that's what participation is about, is assessing the health.
I think when you're looking at an equation and trying to come up with numbers, there's another number we have to factor in, and that is we have numbers for the winter time when there's more people here, and we have numbers for the summertime.
That's a good
And
point.
somehow to just take an average, it doesn't quite, there's got to be a way to see, because some clubs have more, what would you say, winter visitors that join them than full-time members. I mean, I know our rooms, they cut down in half in the summertime. Half of our people leave. But still, a large percentage of the ones that are here year-round do come into the room.
Yeah, but I think what I'm looking at is that would take a place if, okay, the percentage that we're talking about is in the participation, but it's also for, if that group is going to look for a room, a bigger room. So I would think that the association would then look at that and say, okay, well, you're looking for a bigger room. Are you looking for a bigger room full-time? Then you would have to come up with this percentage full-time.
Oh, yeah,
If
'cause-
you're only looking for it for one event, then we're going to look at what participation is for that one event.
No, I mean, wintertime, we're over the fire code, but nobody wants to know that. But, I mean, you got that little number hanging by the door, and you've exceeded it by 20 or 30 people. It's an issue, but the summertime, no big deal.
Yeah.
So, you know, to just count all the names, I mean, and divide them by 12 months doesn't exactly give you an accurate picture.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we would be
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, maybe even something like a 3-month average.
Yeah.
Would do it, because in a quarter, you're going to get that winter look, or you're going to get that
Right, we
summer
have
look.
some that are here 3 months, some that are here 6 months, and then there's full time, yeah.
Anita, quick question. So I take it that these numbers that you're working on will be post-COVID era?
Well, that's what I said. I don't even know. That's why I want to meet with somebody else and kind of throw some ideas of, and I'm going to meet with Phil too, to talk about that, because like I said, just when he said that about the 700, houses, to look at numbers at right now, if I went to a club right now today and said, what are your numbers? That's going to be a ridiculous number to even think about. So I think we would have to kind of say, maybe look over the last 2 or 3 years to see what the numbers were. I know I did get an attendance thing. I don't know if you sent that to Danielle. She sent it to me, and it went 5 years, didn't it? It went 5 years. So I think looking at that, plus looking at maybe 2021 or something like that, might be a way to do this. I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight. I'm just saying that we just need to figure out, first of all, how we're going to collect the numbers. And then I think we're going to have to realistically look at whether these numbers are going to be, realistic to look at right now or not.
Yeah, and in section 1, where you put "and longevity," really kind of takes the sting away from what's happening with COVID right now, for clubs that are not brand new, because this is a blip, hopefully.
Well, like I thought, in my mind, I was thinking, you have some of the clubs, and it's sad to say, but, we have a new generation moving into Sun City West. I mean, I'm one of them. So I have different thoughts than some of the other people. But just because a club has been around for 35 years and I'm not interested in it, should I just walk in and say, hey, they need to get out of that room because I want that room? It's just not right. And so I think, especially right now, thinking about this COVID, an older generation or an older person, they're going to be more susceptible to say, I'm not going to go to a club. Even though I love to go to that club, I might not want to go there right now because I don't know with COVID and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I kind of wanted to add that in there a little bit, because membership numbers, everything's going to be out crazy this year. It's just crazy.
And I think we need to realize that what we're looking at is for the future. We're not looking at making changes for today. We're looking at, because this is a process. It isn't, it doesn't happen, next week or next month. It takes months to get things like this accomplished. And so again, we're looking at for the future of our community, not for today. And we definitely have history that we can rely on in order to help with direction for making a decision for the future. Okay, Anita?
So anyway, those are the only 2 suggestions I have. I don't know if we need to vote on those now or if it's something to revisit or.
Well, no, I think that you need to meet with Tom and look at what you have right now. And again, the committee has given you some input, and be prepared to make another presentation at our next meeting. And you'll meet with Phil and
Okay.
come to some decisions.
Okay.
Again, both on membership and on participation. And again, if on your membership, we did not discuss the changes on membership that's up there on the screen, specifically in the Rrmps.
Yeah, section 1. Yeah, I
And
said.
number 2.
Yeah, I did. I
Okay.
read them both.
And just adding, okay.
So adding the language for chapter 2, section number 1, to add the language, maintaining a club's charter is dependent on the club membership, active participation, and longevity of the existing club's charter.
Okay.
And then chapter 2, section 3, I wanted to add, providing the club meets the participation percentage of their membership, association will assign facility space that meets multiple criterias, including participation, equipment requirement, and availability of room accommodations. That
Okay,
means
and
so
we
if I-
don't have that information up on the screen because that's what you just
Oh, that's true.
recently
Correct.
added the last couple days.
Correct, I'm sorry.
But you're sharing it with the committee. Okay, we will move past membership and participation from, do we have any other comments from the committee? Okay,
I have a question, though.
yes,
And this
Anita.
is the question that I kind of asked you. I'd like to address, and I don't know if this is under the membership or participation, groups within a group. I know that some of the groups, or some of the clubs have joined so that they keep their membership up for charter and to make the numbers bigger for the charters. But what happens within, or how do we handle, or where does this fall if, like within a group, they want to do something different and then they want to ask for a room? So under this percentage of the participation that I thought about, how does that fall? So if there's only 25 people in the group of 100 that want to go off and play cards, but there's already a card club group, but they don't want to play cards with that card club group, they want to do their own. So they want to ask for a room or something like that. So where does that fall? So I want to know if that's like a separate thing that we need to deal with, or should that be under the participation and membership that I'm dealing with? Just a question.
Riley, I think that's, falls in your area.
We had a couple of the card clubs join, if you will, or combined, and to make just it one card club. And they actually share a space. They play at the same time, but they may be playing different games, be it poker over here and 52 over here. So that's what we were trying to do, is have them share a space and allow them to play separate games.
Okay, so like what would you do with okay, I'm just going to, my example that I wrote down for myself. Okay, we got yoga club that's a chartered club. They do yoga and they meet in this room on Tuesdays, okay? 25 of the yoga people decide that they want to do a line dancing group, and they say, oh, let's meet together under our charter of yoga, but now we want a room so we can do line dancing, but we don't want to dance with the line dancing group over there. So how do you treat that group when they come to you and say, okay, we need a room on Tuesday mornings, but there's 25 of us, but we're under this chartered club over here as yoga. So what do we do?
Those are addressed in your RRMPs. You're not to have like clubs within a club. In other words, if there's a yoga studio, you don't have
No,
Boomers Yoga.
but I have to correct you. It says that you can't do another chartered club. But I'm not
Correct.
another chartered club. I'm within a chartered club. I'm under yoga. But now I want to do line dancing.
Under the auspice of the yoga club.
Correct.
Right. We discourage that, and you will probably not get scheduled for a
Okay,
separate room.
that's why, so I didn't know if that needed to be addressed in my membership and participation anywhere or anything like that, because,
No, that's pretty well spelled out.
okay,
We do have clubs that will have a offshoot, and if they have a clubhouse, if you will, and they choose to do an activity, be it play cards or a prime example would be the Boomers Club. They have a club space, and some nights they have a jam session. Some nights they play cards. Other nights they just have social events, and that's fine because that's all falls under what they are as a social club.
okay, so let me ask you the question. In that particular incident, you're saying, and remember, I'm new, so.
Sure.
You're saying that that club has a club space. So is that a
Correct.
club space like on Tuesdays from 6 to 8?
Correct. They share with the women's club. They have, they utilize the women's club from 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock.
So they can do anything they want with
week.
that space in that
Yes,
time?
They can pretty much do whatever they'd like.
But they don't get it for another day and time?
No.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question.
Okay.
So, but it is possible, isn't it, that you could have a special event? if all-
certainly.
And if the yoga club wanted to sponsor a special event, which they'd pay for that facility, they can use it if the space is available through scheduling. You wouldn't just decline them then, would you?
No. If they decide that one of their special events is to have a line dancing night, that's absolutely fine. They get 2 of those a year. And if they want to do additional ones, obviously, like you said, they can rent the space and if it's available, we'll allow them to use it.
And as a follow-on, I can give you an example of a craft club. We had a Kelper and Ameling that was a dyeing club, and so what they did, because some of the techniques they do are similar, they said what we'll do is we'll start doing more fusing of glass, which is under the auspices of stained glass. And so what they've done, they've got a great club, don't get me wrong, but it is like-minded to our club, And they got, and I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but they got their expansion of their scope of their club, because copper enameling's not popular. There's only one person in their club who was actually doing it. So it happens, and it may not always be, treated equally, but I think, the rec centers looks at it, and then they decide. But if let's say stained glass or copper enameling / glass fusing, where one of the clubs started to falter, maybe it would be time to say, we need to consolidate their space into one, and then open up that space for other people, for other clubs, right?
That's exactly what we do with utilization.
Yeah.
So just to be a little more confusing, Anita, how long have you lived here? I'm sorry? So you know it. It would be the Sportsman Club. And the Sportsman Club is a whole different animal, and real important to carve it out because swimming belongs to that, but so does hiking, I think, belongs to that. Riley, what are all the clubs within Sportsman Club?
You have the shooting club, you have the Jeep club, master swimmers, archery. And all of those clubs are sub-clubs, if you will.
And totally unrelated.
Yes, totally unrelated, but almost all of those take place off campus. It's basically they're using the rec centers as a place to gather and go out to their Jeep run or out to do their archery or their shooting, that type of thing.
So that technically goes back to my very first thing, that since I was new to this committee, I really didn't know what the task was. So clarifying this, so maybe Tom and I could get together and kind of clarify what we're going to use those numbers for, and then how we would gather the numbers. And so
Correct.
something
I'm
like
really
that.
interested in what we're going to use the numbers for.
Yeah.
Especially in a model like the Sportsman Club.
Yeah, so that's why I said, so I think that's what we need to kind of narrow down, and we'll meet, we'll figure some stuff out. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay.
Madam President, or Chairman, it's club website, 701 is our next one.
Thank you. Last item on the agenda was 701 club websites, and I attached a copy of an email that went out to all the club presidents from the association for content managers. And I just wanted to confirm and say this was great. This basically is telling all the charter clubs there is help for your content managers. And it says that Jean and Liz Matovsky have volunteered their time to help clubs with their websites, with virtual meetings, and Jean and Liz have indeed actually made videos and given detailed instructions for many things that the content managers would be responsible for. So I just wanted to share that, and again, what a great thing. Finally, on our agenda, comments. Any final comments from the committee?
Yeah, I had a question, and
Yes,
it goes to websites.
Okay.
Golf ops changed recently, and so I always end up having to go and read when my husband's tee times comes in, tell him when he's playing and where he's playing. But I noticed, like on our club website, we're very careful not to have where people have written access easily to our club's members' emails, their rec card numbers. I can go through the whole group of 10 foursomes that he plays with, and every time that comes out, it has their email and their rec card numbers. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it seems like on one hand, we're pushing, be very careful, don't give this information out, and yet when the tee times show up, I can read it for every guy, all 40 of them. It's right on there.
Yeah, I can be happy to reply to that, and I appreciate the comment, Karen. It was a huge concern for us as well when we adopted the new portal and on the old portal as well, and we weighed back and forth. But the fact of the matter is, all the golfers use those rec card numbers to pick their foursomes and schedule them to the point where they were actually posting them on the bulletin boards outside at the pro shop. So it's already out there. It's not something we're happy about, but
Yeah.
it is a fact of life. And taking that option away would mean they wouldn't be able to schedule their friends. You know, you have a John Smith and a John Smith, and it's only the rec card that differentiates them.
Yeah, the rec card, I don't really have a problem with because it really doesn't mean anything. It's when people get your email and all of a sudden you've got more junk mail or more scam things coming in over it, that I'm a little bit more concerned about the email availabilities to anybody that wants to go see it than the rec card number.
Well, they must already know them or golf with them to have access to it because it is online. It gets sent to those in the group. But again, not allowing them to each receive an email when they get a tea time book. Sometimes that communication doesn't come down. You know, the captain might get the email, but the others in the foursome don't. And so everything is tied with that email as well.
I just wondered why all of a sudden there it was.
It's a concern. It just, the pushback from the golfers would have been huge if we took away some of that information and they couldn't identify their fellow players.
Thank you, Katie. Any other comments?
I just have a
Yes,
question.
Judy.
Is the plan that each club, chartered club, get a new copy of the RRNPs when
Yes.
all this is said and done?
Yes.
Because I know ours were like 20 years old when I
Yes,
was
each
looking.
club will
Okay,
get
cool.
one hard copy.
Awesome.
Katie, do we have any comments from the community?
No.
Okay,
Um,
then,
Madam Chairman,
yes, Mr.
I think
President.
Director Young here has a comment for you. He has his hand up. No? Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Do you want to share now? Riley?
There's a few clubs that are struggling, but the majority of them, we allowed them to just roll over the board members from this year to next year. Unfortunately, they didn't have much of a chance to participate during the COVID, and so most of the clubs have just elected to vote in the last year's board.
Jim, is your mic on?
Is your mic on?
Well, is there a green light? Hold it. Here, this one's on. This one's on, Jim. Thanks, George.
I spend a lot of time listening to meetings on virtual, and I want to tell you, it's impossible, very, very difficult. And I would suggest that unless you're talking back and forth with two individuals, that you announce your name ahead of time. We have no clue who's talking when you're listening to this outside. You have to remember, these meetings are virtual and they're for everybody, not just for people here. And the other issue that we have is we can't hear half of you. You don't talk into the mics. You think you're talking to the neighbor next door or something. It's just a comment that I have to make. You guys did better. When the chairperson recognizes somebody, that's fine. But if you're just raising your hand or you just start talking, it would help a lot if you mentioned who you are. Because we sure don't know when we're sitting out in my pajamas at home. Anyway, thank you.
Thank
That's all.
you, Jim. Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. A comment that I'd like to make about your committee and your leadership and staff. This is the first time in many, many years that there has been a bridge and a working relationship between committee members and staff to get things accomplished. And it's one of the highlights that your committee should be extremely proud of. The things that you're working on are things that staff and you are doing together, which is a monumental goal that is out there. And I just wanted to make sure that you all know that I appreciate it, and I'm sure other directors also appreciate that bridge between staff and the committee and the clubs that are out there. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our next meeting will be November 10th, 9 a.m. here in the social hall. And if there are no other comments, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.